Good evening, folks. My name is Jayren Andrews, and here we are with Inside Avondale. Tonight's theme is health and community and police relations. The quote for today is an eye for an eye is a brother without a heart. Tonight we have a special guest. To my left we have Miss Iris Roley. How are you doing tonight?
I am very well. How are you today?
I'm good. And I've been told that you're a businesswoman, a
Yes.
community activist, and the vice president of the Cincinnati Black United Front. Would you like to tell us about that?
Wow, that's amazing. I'm not the vice president of the Cincinnati Black United Front. I became project manager for the Cincinnati Black United Front in 2001 when we filed our racial profiling lawsuit against the city of Cincinnati.
Yes, ma'am.
And the city's police department, Cincinnati Police Department. So I became project manager. So let me just go back a little bit. Okay,
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
gonna walk through this. So I was born and raised in Avondale, and in the city of Cincinnati, Ohio. Lived all over Avondale. Went to every elementary school in Avondale. So I love Avondale. Let me say that. I want to say thank you for having me and having this very complicated conversation around community, health, violence, Black love. All the topics that you all will one day take the reins and try to make better for your kids and your grandkids. So I thank you for having me today.
Yes, ma'am. It is also an honor to be here interviewing you tonight. One thing I want to talk about is what is the relationship with Black youth and the police?
Well, currently, if we're talking local, it's gotten better. Nationally, it seems that it has gotten a lot worse. Now, there are many, many reasons for that. And so if we historically look at what police were enacted to do and the powers that they were given by cities and municipalities, it was like the overseer model. Some police in the South were Klan members, and so they became police officers to oversee and control Black people. In the North, it was more like the Irish workmen, and so they came with some indentured servitude, I want to say attitudes towards African Americans, and then African Americans were allowed to become police officers in the late 60s, early 70s. So
Yes, ma'am.
it's always been a very complicated, very violent, very horrible relationship between police and the African American community. So what we set out to do in 2001 was attempt to change that.
Okay.
Because in 2001 to us, and before then, Black Lives Matter, not just by way of police killing people, but by way of police disrespecting Black people. At one time, it wasn't the youth so much as it was older Black people, the adults in the community. So we saw some systemic policies and procedures that were inspirational for police to behave in a very biased manner towards African Americans. So we set out to change that. And I think we've done a little work here in the city. But what you see across the country is a behavior of power and control. And some people say it's racism. Some people say, the police have way too many powers. Some people say that the African American community deserves the treatment because we're all perceived as criminals and all of our children are perceived as criminals or will be criminals. And so you have to deal with those complexities of people's prejudices and perceptions of individuals.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you got to fight back. You got to fight back against those type of behaviors, thoughts, and policies and procedures. And so we know that we're not. I know that you're not a criminal. I know that you're not destined to be one. I'm not. The people in this room are not. And so we have to fight hard to change those perceptions, no matter who it's coming from, whether it's Black, white, Hispanic, Eskimoan. We don't care. We want to be treated just like you treat every other taxpayer in the city. I'm a taxpayer.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
asked me if I was a businesswoman. Yes, I own my own business. I own property in the city. I pay taxes. So I want a return on my investment. So I want my police department to treat me and you and everyone else the same.
Yes, ma'am. Now, due to these complexities, how is it that the Black youth and people locally and nationally can fight fairly in a nonviolent manner to get the rights that we deserve?
I'm glad you said the nonviolent part, because I'm very afraid that if the adults and prevailing and thoughtful and wise people don't prevail, it's going to be much more violence in the street. And so there are a lot of guns on the street. Police have guns. There are a lot of illegal guns on the street. So we did our thing in a very nonviolent way. Now, not to say that anyone could come and run over us. Not to say that you can violate my rights in my quest for equity for me and my children and my grandchildren and for everyone in Avondale. Not to say that you can just blow smoke and I think that you're going to do the right thing. So the way that we decided to fight, and there are many ways that you can strategize the fight. We had three things going in the city of Cincinnati in the early 2000s. We filed a federal lawsuit, which means that we showed that there was a pattern and practice of abuse towards African Americans in the city of Cincinnati in a 5-year period. We had 15 unarmed black men, as you see in the newspapers, and we have documented here, that were killed by Cincinnati Police Department in 5 years, unarmed, meaning they had no weapon.
Yes,
Some
ma'am.
of them suffered from mental illness. So, and the youngest was Timothy Thomas, but Timothy Thomas actually came after we filed our federal lawsuit. Most people believe that it was before. We filed March 13th, 2001, and Timothy was murdered April 7th of 2001. So we were trying to be proactive so that our community didn't have to suffer another death at the hands of the police.
Right. What are ways that black youth can try to exercise these rights? Because what I'm hearing from you is that we want to get everyone more involved in more of a positive, proactive manner. Am I correct?
Absolutely. But there's a hard thing. So the hard part is getting people to recognize that there is a problem.
Okay.
And sometimes that's very difficult. And sometimes things are going to get lost. And unfortunately, we lost 15 unarmed black men. Timothy Thomas being, 19 years old. He was our Michael Brown in 2001. And so we've had lives lost, which is so very unfortunate. No one should have to suffer that. No one should have to lose a loved one to see a policy change. Policy should change if it does not benefit the greater good. The way that Cincinnati Police Department was policing did not serve the greater good. African Americans in the city of Cincinnati, we almost make up 50% of the population here. And we deserve to be treated fairly.
Yes,
Study
ma'am.
shows, all the data shows that it's a very small percentage of people that are committing crimes, black or white, Hispanic, Native American. Is a very small percentage of people. And so when you really look at what the percentage looks like, then it doesn't support the traditional type of policing that you see happening in other cities like Ferguson and what you see happening in Cleveland and even as close as Beaver Creek, where they don't use strategies to really get at root causational problems. They don't build relationships. They don't have youth speaking with police. They don't have youth helping to design what policies and procedures look like. They don't have African Americans sitting on selection and interviewing teams. They don't have African Americans advising the police chief and the city manager. So we went through that, and it was very, very hard. It was a very hard thing for adults to go through. So it was our job to go through that very hard time so we can make it easier for you all to come behind us and say, well, we want to take what you did and we want to now change it.
Yes, ma'am. Now, the first thing you said was that we have to get people to understand that there is a problem. As a black youth, I get that I must stay in my books and keep myself prioritized and focused and understanding that not only a good job will keep my kids well fed, but
Or a good business.
or a good business, but it will also benefit towards the others around me.
Absolutely. And that is your job. And that's your only job right now, is to go to school and prepare for the future. It is our job to fight these battles.
Yes, ma'am. I want to thank you for coming again. We'll be right back with the show. Remember, the quote for tonight is an eye for an eye is a brother without a heart. Tonight's theme is health and community and police relations. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at hashtag Inside Avondale, hashtag Inside Avondale. Thank you, folks. We'll be right back.
My brothers and sisters, I challenge everyone in this room this evening not to become impatient with our struggle, not to become weary with our outcomes, not to become financially reluctant with our programs, and not to become indifferent about the health of blacks, Latinos, and poor whites who live in communities that guarantees them a shorter and sicker life than their white brothers and sisters. We don't stack the deck against some of the members of our community, that we don't devalue the life of someone because of their color or what side of the tracks that they come from, but recognize that all men and women are created equal, and equality must be reflected in health and health care. Our journey continues.
We have some of the greatest health institutions in the world here in Cincinnati. And if you see the crowd here, and if you know the crowd that Dwight can reach and the people that he can reach, the very people that we talk about trying to reach, we can get this job done. And the mission for the next 10 years, and I hope to help, is to close that gap. But I know that no one like my friend Dwight Tillery can do it better, and so I look forward to working with him to close that gap. Thank you very much.
I'm Mayor John Cranley, and I believe that every citizen deserves the best chance to be healthy and live a long life. But in our city, there are vulnerable populations who get sicker and die faster than others. It's preventable, and it's unacceptable. The Center for Closing the Health Gap is working hard to improve the well-being of our entire community. From health screenings to healthy eating programs, the health gap is making a difference. So join the campaign to end health inequities. Volunteer, donate, advocate. Help us save a life.
And we're back with Inside Avondale. I'm your host, Jayren Andrews, the president of the Avondale Youth Council. Don't forget to check us out with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with hashtag Inside Avondale, hashtag Inside Avondale. Tonight's theme is health and community and police relations. The quote for tonight of the theme is, "An eye for an eye is a brother without a heart." To my left, we still have Miss Iris Roley. Now, I wanted to touch back on one thing for the 15 men lost. Do you mind telling us about that?
Well, these are our 15. And as you see, it goes back to 1995. We have Harvey Price, Randy Black, Courtney Matthews, Roger Owensby Jr., Michael Carpenter, Lorenzo Collins, James King, Adam Wheeler, Kerry Thompson, Daniel Williams, Jermaine Lowe, Alfred Pope, and Timothy Thomas. And there are others that are not here. And here are some of them. And Timothy Thomas being the last that were unarmed. Michael Carpenter, when you dive into these stories and you look into what the police said the reasons were that they shot, it made no sense. I mean, and these were deaths that were senseless. Mm-hmm. And so in communities, when you have senseless violence, and that's what this is, it's violence.
Yes, ma'am.
There's collateral damage. Families lose, communities lose. We begin to not have any faith in a system that is supposed to work for all citizens. Roger Owensby was a case that is very near and dear. And Roger Owensby, he and Jeffrey Irons are 2 and 24. And that was in November of 2000. And the reason that those two are very special is because Jeffrey Irons was a mental health patient, but Roger Owensby was very special. He was a young black man who was the only parent to his daughter. He was a veteran. He had served several tours of duty. He had just gotten home from Iraq, and he was home 6 months before he was killed at the hands of the Cincinnati police. Mm-hmm. And they never, ever showed Roger in any of the media, or local media at the time of his death, in his uniform as a veteran. And that was a shame, because they wanted to make him out as being some type of thug, some angry black man, when he had simply done several, not one, several tours of duty, and he had come home to his daughter and to his parents.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
so and this is what he came home to. So that is really Roger Owensby and Jeffrey Irons was the real impetus in the Cincinnati Black United Front organizing to focus with the community's blessing on police community relations, in particular uses of force, using very deadly weapons first, not having relationships, no accountability, no transparency. This was a very hard time for us in the community. Have 2 deaths in 24 hours.
Yes, ma'am.
It was just totally ridiculous, unnecessary, and it was very hard. And the community wanted to change, so we decided to focus on that change.
Now, in result of this collateral damage of this senseless violence, I'm understanding that the motive is to weaken the community. But in backlash to that, you have come across the collaborative agreement.
Collaborative agreement.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like to talk to us about
Sure. The collaborative agreement is the only agreement like that in the country.
that? Mm-hmm.
And our collaborative agreement is attached to the memorandum of agreement, which was an agreement between the city, which is an agreement between the city and the Department of Justice.
Yes.
The collaborative is the MOA's twin sister. They go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were able to do because the community pushed so hard is that inside of the collaborative, it puts the black community right smack dab in the middle
Yes, ma'am.
of reforms. So that means that we had to sit down and negotiate with the FOP, Fraternal Order of Police in the city, and the city administration on how we decided what we thought policing would look like for African Americans in the city of Cincinnati. So that's what the collaborative did for us. And not only did it give us that, we're still operating out of the spirit of the collaborative. And I must say the city and the police department are operating in the best spirit I've ever seen. So the collaborative had a 5-year mandate that was deemed by the federal judge, which expired in 2007.
Mhm.
And we're still operating as if the federal judge is watching us. Now, don't get it twisted, because all of the reforms inside of the MOA, the Memorandum of Understanding, are now municipal code.
Yes.
What does that mean? That means that it is law. That means that the police must do things in these orders. They must use this discipline matrix. They must, when they step to you, tell you why they're stopping you. They have to do things in a certain way. So those things never go away unless the community says we need to change and we want something different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did, and that's what I meant by earlier when you all come about. So because things are changing. We're talking about body cameras now. We're talking about different tools that the police are using. Body cameras are not part of our agreement. But because we have this agreement and we've been working in great spirit with the city and the police department, we will have great input on how those body cameras will be used if we deem our police department needs to have them.
Yes, ma'am. I watched a video of you talking about this, I believe, September 15th of last year. And it was speaking of how the Cincinnati police is adopting a new community-oriented policing. What exactly is that?
Well, the new strategy in the inside of the collaborative is problem-oriented policing. So what does that mean? That means that if the police has a call for a robber, that they just can't come into Avondale and just, gather everybody up and say, did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? What problem-oriented policing requires is a strategy.
Okay.
And the strategy is to look at where crime is happening and to focus on those that we know are doing crime.
Mm-hmm.
So you just don't sweep everybody up. So you won't hear them say sweeps, at least not while I'm around. And if you hear them say sweeps, correct them and say CPD doesn't do that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so instead of just sweeping us all up and we all become now very angry with them and our time is being consumed and we could be in jail for a couple of days before we're let out, those type of things don't happen anymore. So it has to be very focused, very data-driven, and very problem-solving oriented with the community.
Yes, ma'am. Now, I believe a couple of years ago, you actually did a class with the Avondale Youth Council about how to deal with the police. I wasn't a part yet, but would you like to tell me what that was?
So that was about knowing your rights and just knowing your rights when the police stop you.
Okay.
But what I've been focusing on lately is making sure the police know the rules when dealing with young folks. So we didn't know your rights when you stopped by the police, what you must tell them if they ask you, how you should comply, because we don't want another death, we don't want another arrest, we don't want another beat up. We want our babies to go home, we want our babies to feel whole, and we want our babies to feel a part of this city.
Yes, ma'am. I would really like to get more into that and we're setting up another class and actually making that more locally.
We can do it.
Yes, ma'am. And we'll be right back. This is Inside Avondale. I'm your host, Jayren Andrews. And to my left, we have Miss Iris Roley. The theme for tonight is health and community and police relations. The quote is, "An eye for an eye as a brother without a heart." Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with hashtag Inside Avondale, hashtag Inside Avondale. Thank you, folks. We'll be right back.
Superstar.
Take me to the river, put me in the water. Fire baptism, spirit, son, and father. Faith gang goonies, fear stay slaughtered. I die in these truths, faith gang martyr. I'm about that life, we about that life. I'm about that life, we about that life. This ain't for the weak, it take a sacrifice. We about that life, we about that life. Lord protect me as I run up on the devil's turf. Infiltrators camping, turn them to converts. Psychics and the prophets hit them where it hurts. Snatch them out the wild and bring them to the church. Contract demon killer, boy, I put in work. Exercise and exorcism, run them out the earth. Up late, 3 a.m., that's the witching hour. So I plead the blood, take away they witching power. I'm really about that life, boy, it's not a game. Committed to the calling, holiness my aim. Bang, bang. The angels in heaven probably think I be playing. Call fire down and tell the spirit rain. If you from the other side, it sounds foreign to you. It's counterculture over here, you should conform to it. If you from the other side, it might be foreign to you. It's counterculture over here, boy. Faye. Take me to the river, put me in the water. Fire baptism, spirit, son, and father. Faith gang goonies, fear stay slaughtered. I die in these truths, faith gang martyr. I'm about that life, we about that life. I'm about that life, we about that life. This ain't for the weak, it take a sacrifice. We about that life, we about that life. The track ain't the only thing we be. Whole clique victors, we don't know defeat. Understand you dealing with some children of the king. So I win no matter what, like I play for both teams. Pray for both me and the Faith Gang family. Fly mental mindset, ain't no point in landing. Heir to the throne, in the air I'm standing.
And we're back to wrap up for tonight's show. My name is Jayren Andrews, the host, also the president of the Avondale Youth Council. To my left, we had a special guest, Ms. Iris Roley. Tonight's theme was health and community and police relations. The quote, was "An eye for an eye is a brother without a heart." Ms. Roley, how can the youth get more involved with this movement?
Well, there are several different ways, and thank you, Mr. President, again for having me, and thank you for doing this. And we need to talk more. We need to have more communications, and the more that you talk and young folk can listen, the better off I believe that we'll be, because education truly is the key. So I want to start there. One of the things that I believe that our children need to do, that the babies need to do, is focus on their education. Building this nation and making sure things are right for you all when you become of age is our job.
Yes,
it is what we're supposed to do. But we do ask you to become active from time to time and to help us push things. So you can always stay aware, always stay positive, always stay prayed up and be on the right side of the issue. And speak up. Don't allow chaos to happen around you. Be responsible for your environment. Be responsible for your friends. In the day when I grew up, and I know you all say it's old school, we cared about each other's grades. We cared about, if one had something to eat. We cared about families, even at a young age. And so I'm asking you all to stay together in that way and make sure that you take care of folk in Avondale like you do so very well. You all do an awesome job. But also keep your eyes and ears open on true journalism, and so that you can read a story and come up with the proper, appropriate picture and come up with your own conclusion based on facts. And so stay abreast of what's happening, not just locally, but nationally as well.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
And always listen to your elders.
Yes, I've been told that. Like the eldest is always the wisest.
Absolutely.
For the youth to become more involved, I'm really intrigued. A part is keeping up in grades and leaning on one another, because as black youth myself, I don't really see too much as black teenagers really dependent on one another. Everyone is always for themselves, following the rule of survival of the fittest. But who is really the fittest if no one has taught you how to do that properly?
We're only as strong as our weakest link.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that whole survival of the fittest thing that works in the nature world. So I'm a graduate of the zoo school.
Yes,
I don't know
ma'am.
if you knew that, class of 82.
Yes.
And so that is for other species that have to go and hunt and survive. We're not them. We're much more intelligent, and we know how to communicate, and we know what's right and what's wrong. We just need to do better. We need to act better. We need to be better. Let me give you some stats, and maybe this will help young folk understand what I mean.
Yes, ma'am.
In 1929, when Martin Luther King Jr. was born, in the state of Ohio, there were 8,800 people in prisons. In 1955, the year of the Montgomery bus boycott,
Yes,
there were
ma'am.
10,000 individuals in the state of Ohio in prison. In 1963, the year of I Have a Dream speech, there were 11,000 people. The year that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, in 1968, there were 10,000 people. In 1978, there were 12,000 in 10 prisons. In 2002, there were 35,000 people in Ohio. We now have 31 to 32 prisons with 51,000 people inside of these prisons, busting at the seams. Violence, crime is a health issue for all of us. So don't go down that path. Don't give your parents that worry. Don't aspire to be a criminal. Aspire to be a problem solver, to figure out why we have these root causes, why we have a disparity in education, why we have a disparity in jobs, why we have these disparities in health care. Figure that out. And don't give us more problems and more people inside the prisons.
May God bless you. I appreciate the advice, ma'am.
Thank you.
My name is Jayren Andrews, the host of Inside Avondale, the president of the Avondale Youth Council. We had a special guest, Miss Iris Roley. Thank you for coming out tonight. Tonight's theme was health and community and police relations. An eye for an eye is a brother without a heart. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at hashtag Inside Avondale. Thank you all for listening tonight. Good night.